Welcome to Archon's Academy at Press 1 for Fireball. I'm Archon, and I'm here to teach you Dungeons & Dragons.
Press 1 for Fireball.
Let's get started. Today, we're going over everything you need to know about spellcasting in Dungeons & Dragons 5e. There's a lot. Topics we're going to cover include sources of magic power, schools of magic, abilities for spell modifiers, calculating your spell modifiers, spell components and focuses, cantrips and leveled spells, prepared spells versus known spells, and ritual casting. Sources of power. This is something that you are going to want to work on with your Dungeon Master, or they might have something for you, but there's a couple different sources of power in Dungeons & Dragons. Namely, arcane magic, divine magic, natural magic, innate magic, and pact magic. And each of the classes kind of fall into some of these. However, there is room for overlap depending on your DM or the story you're playing in, or your subclass sometimes. But generally, arcane magic is harnessed through knowledge and study. These are your wizards, not really your sorcerers. They would have innate magic, but some of them do learn in their subclasses. But mostly your wizards and your artificers are going to be in here. Divine magic is granted by deities or divine entities. These are mostly your clerics and your paladins. Natural magic is drawn from the natural world. These are your druids and your rangers. Innate magic is your sorcerers. So again, some of them can learn through study, but most of them are born with the ability. Something happened in their bloodline, in their timeline, whatever it is, they are born or given. The spells, they just have it. They aren't given it by someone, they're given it from their parents or predecessors. And then there's pact magic, which is warlocks, which is also from a divine entity, usually not divine good, usually evil, but some of them are divine. But basically, warlocks make a deal with their patron versus being granted their power like a cleric or a paladin would be. Again, this is all subject to your DM and the story you're playing in, but these are mainly where your characters and your classes are going to draw your power from. Next, let's go over the schools of magic. Again, this is something that I don't really memorize. I don't have this known. If this does come up, spells will tell you what they are. As a player, it's kind of fun to not always know which spell belongs to which class, but I wanted to go over them just so that you know what they are. The schools of magic are abjuration, conjuration, divination, enchantment, evocation, illusion, necromancy, and transmutation. And here's the description of each. So they each do different things. Each spells are contained into them for different things, such as divination reveals things, reveals information. Conjuration transports things. That's not all it does, but that's kind of the overall description of them. And each spell will fall into one of these different categories. More importantly, your ability scores for your spell modifiers. These are where your character gets their power from their character sheet. So the first one we have is intelligence. These are your wizards and your artificers. Certain subclasses of other classes base on the wizard spellcasting, so they would also be intelligence based. But as far as just the normal spellcasters, wizards and artificers are the two that are intelligence based. That means their intelligence stat is what's going to determine their spell power. Next, we have wisdom, which is your clerics, your druids, and your rangers. They gain their power from their wisdom ability. And lastly, we have charisma. These are your sorcerers, bards, warlocks, and paladins. They gain power through their charisma, through various means. So how do you calculate those, and what do they mean? Well, in D&D 5e, spellcasters use their spellcasting ability modifier to determine the effectiveness of their spells. What that means is the three categories I just went over with you, whichever yours falls into, that's going to be the number you use for your spellcasting abilities. Key terms for your spell modifiers are your spellcasting ability modifier. This is the bonus derived from the spellcaster's primary ability score. So wisdom for clerics. I'm going to be using the example of my character Basilius, who I have scaled down to level 5 to make the numbers a little bit easier to use, and he is a cleric. So he will be wisdom based. The spellcasting ability modifier is just your modifier from your ability. So wisdom for clerics. Spell save DC. This is the difficulty class for saving throws against your spells. So if you cast a spell that they have to save against, they save against your spell save DC. The opposite side of that is your spell attack modifier. This is a bonus added to your attack rolls for your spells that have an attack. So if your spell says make an attack spell or cast a spell at something without a save DC, you will be attacking at that creature. And this is going to make a little more sense in a second when I show you how to calculate them. And each spell will tell you which one it is. So Basilius, like I said, is a level 5 cleric, which gives him a +3 proficiency bonus, and he has 18 wisdom. So his spellcasting ability modifier, wisdom, 18, gives him a +4. If you don't know where you get that +4 from, I do cover that in another video. That's also in the player's handbook. But basically, the ability score number translates to a certain modifier. In this case, it's a +4. So to calculate his spell save DC, the formula for that is 8 plus his proficiency bonus, which we know is a +3, plus his spellcasting ability modifier. So in his example, 8 plus 3 plus his 4 from wisdom gives him a 15. What this means is you must roll at least a 15 to save against a spell that Basilius casts on you. So if his spell has a save DC and he casts it on you, you, in your save, have to roll at least a 15 total. Next, we have the spell attack modifier. The formula for this is your proficiency bonus plus your spellcasting ability modifier. So you do not get the 8 base start in this one. It's just the other two numbers. In his case, like we know, he has a 3 for his proficiency bonus and a 4 for his wisdom spellcasting ability modifier. So he has a +7 to hit with attack spells. So if Basilius is casting a spell like Guiding Bolt, which is an attack spell you are trying to hit someone, I would roll my d20 and I get to add 7 to that spell to see if I hit against the DC or the armor class of who I'm trying to hit with that. Next, we have spellcasting components. Spells require some or all of the following, and again, each spell will tell you which they require. Verbal, you must say the incantation at a normal speaking volume at least, and I say normal speaking volume because there are specific abilities that let you whisper or silent cast a spell. Normally, you have to say it at a normal speaking volume. That's not something that your character is going to be able to do without specifically going for that feat. Somatic, which means you must make the symbols with at least one free hand. And material. You must have the material items needed by the spell. There's one more, which is time. Each spell will tell you its casting time, but the other 3 is going to be listed on the spell. It will say V/S/M if you need all 3 of them, or just V or just V/S /S. That's tough to say. Whichever the combination is, but each spell is going to tell you which of the 3 components it needs and how much time you need to cast the spell. Now, there's also spellcasting focuses, which almost every class will get and use. What this is this is an item that certain classes can use in place of material components for spells. Examples include a holy symbol, a wand, a book, a staff, and in some cases, a shield or a weapon. How do these work? Having the focus on your person allows you to cast spells without needing to use the material components, so that would be the M category, provided the components don't have a listed cost. Again, the spell will tell you, you will see in parentheses something like 50 gold, or Revivify is a common one, that's 300 gold worth of diamonds. It will specifically tell you if there is a cost associated with it. If it just says something like a feather with no cost associated with it, your spellcasting focus will cover that feather. You do not need a feather to cast a spell as long as you're using your focus to cast it. Some examples of this are a paladin wearing an amulet around their neck, using it as a focus while still wielding a 2-handed weapon. They could momentarily release one hand from the weapon to perform the somatic component and then return to a 2-handed grip. So the amulet is going to count as their material component. So the materials are already covered by them having the amulet on their person. The somatic component, they need at least one free hand. So let's say, as you can see on the right, my paladin in the top right is holding a two-handed heavy sword. He has released his grip, and he is now holding it with one hand, which he can't swing with, but he has his free hand to cast his spell, to perform his somatic components with. And if there is a verbal component as well, his mouth is free to say them. But his amulet counts as his focus so that he doesn't need the feather or whatever the material component is, provided that material component didn't have an extra cost to it. Another example of this is a cleric with a one-handed weapon and a shield. By Raw, rules as written, they would need to stow or drop either their weapon or drop their shield to have a free hand to cast their spell. This situation is a little more complicated because a cleric typically uses their shield as their focus. A lot of clerics do because it allows you to not need something else on you. As you can see, my cleric does have his insignia on his shield. So in his case, to use his shield as his focus, he would need to drop or stow his weapon to have a free hand. If he dropped his shield, he would still need the material components because he no longer has his shield on his person to cast the spell. That might get a little complicated. Watch that one again if it does. It'll make more sense if you try to use this in a game, which all of this will. Next, let's get into spells in general. In D&D 5e, spells are divided into two main types, cantrips and leveled spells. Understanding the differences between these will help you be a more rounded spellcaster and help you use your spells in more settings and not feel as limited as a spellcaster. So spellcasters can cast cantrips without using up much magical energy. Think of cantrips like an everyday skill or routine that you've mastered. Real-world comparison would be something like using a hand tool or a spatula. This is something that, yes, you did learn it at some point, but it really didn't take a lot for you to learn, and it's something you could do every day. You could do it for a long time without really feeling tired or feeling like you really have to think about what you're doing. Some examples of these are Mage Hand, Dancing Lights, and Booming Blade, which is one of my favorite spells in general. But those are all cantrips, so you can cast those without using much magical energy. Cantrips are considered level 0 spells. So again, you can cast a cantrip without using up much of your magical energy. It's not going to take a lot. You can't cast these again and again and again, but it doesn't take any of your leveled spells. Now, leveled spells are more powerful spells that require the use of a spell slot to cast. And again, your class will tell you how many spell slots you have, but a real-world comparison compared to the spatula or the hand tool like a hand drill is something like driving a forklift or filleting a fish or making a souffle. These are going to require more energy, more effort. You're going to have to actually learn how to do these. These are probably not things you can pick up and do right away. In the case of a sorcerer, this would be an innate ability you have, but these require more of you. These require your focus. These require some materials. These are going to require more of you, so that's a comparison I use to compare leveled spells versus cantrips. Some examples of these include Cure Wounds, Fireball, and Polymorph. Each class gets so many spell slots based on your class level. The Player's Handbook will go over this, or D&D Beyond, whatever you're using for your character sheets. It's going to tell you how many you have at each level. Each spell has a specific level. Again, cantrips count as level 0. They will tell you they are a cantrip. Every other spell will tell you the level that it is. Higher level spells generally have more potent effects. Basically, the higher level the spell is, generally it's going to be a stronger spell or have more effects to it. Also, any spell can be upcast, but not downcast. What this means is you can use a higher spell slot to cast a spell, but not a lower one. So if you have a level 1 spell, and you only have level 2 spell slots left, you can use one of those to cast that level 1 spell, but vice versa, if you had a level 2 spell and you only had level 1 spell slots left, you cannot do that. Some spells get extra effects or they get stronger if you upcast them, but not all do. Some just allow you to cast the spell as it is at whatever level it's normally cast at. Now I want to talk about known spells versus prepared spells. So in D&D 5e, spellcasters can either prepare their spells daily from a larger source or a known list known set list of spells. Classes that prepare spells include clerics, druids, paladins, and wizards. Classes that just know spells and don't prepare spells every day include sorcerers, bards, warlocks, and rangers. Again, some feats, some subclasses might blur the lines on these, but generally these are where the two classes fall in, or the two sets of classes fall in. Known spellcasters are a fixed list of spells that the character can cast without needing to prepare them each day. So you would have a limited number of spells that you can learn as you level up, but you don't need to change them out daily. So an example of this is a 5th level sorcerer can know 6 spells and can cast them at any time they have the spell slots available, but they cannot change them out. Some feats and updates let you switch out spells at certain levels or milestones. Again, there's always updates to the game, but this is how the base rule is. So if you're playing a sorcerer, you would know 6 spells that you can cast every day. You never need to worry about changing them out or utilizing your spellbook in a different way, because you don't really have a spellbook if you're a sorcerer. You know your spells, you have a focus, and you go about your day. Versus your prepared spellcasters. These are typically your more complicated spellcasters. Prepared spells are chosen from the character's largest spell list each day. That list might be a book if you're a wizard, or a deity if you are some of the other classes. Each day, you can prepare a certain number of spells based on your level and spellcasting ability modifier. Everyone say hello to Sterling. He wanted to join. So an example of this is a 5th level cleric with a wisdom modifier of +4, which we know as Basilius, can prepare 9 leveled spells, which is level 5, +4, per day, but he has access to his entire cleric list of spells for his level and subclass. So Basilius has X number of spells. I don't know what it is off the top of my head. Let's just say it's 20 for the sake of this example. Basilius has 20 spells, and every day when he wakes up, or typically after a long rest or it resets at dawn, he can say, these are the 9 spells that I want to carry in my brain today. I want to know how to cast these and have these ready for today. And that's all I can really handle right now. Of my 20 spells, if I really think about them tomorrow, I can change them out, some of them for 9 different spells, but for today, I can focus on these 9 leveled spells. Now, he would have his cantrips on top of that, but as far as his leveled spells, he can have 9. Now, a bonus to this, and the last thing I want to cover today, is ritual spellcasting. Ritual spellcasting is like following a recipe instead of casting by heart. So this has extra casting time. It adds 10 minutes to your spell's casting time. So like I said before, a spell is going to tell you if it cost an action or a minute to cast. Casting it as a ritual adds 10 minutes to that time. The spell must have the ritual tag in its description. Again, spells will tell you. When in doubt, read the spell. That's what I always recommend to any DM, any player. When in doubt, the spell will tell you what it does, what it costs, what you need for it. But a ritual spell will tell you on D&D Beyond, it will have a little book symbol with an R in it. Classes that can cast ritual spells are bards, clerics, druids, wizards, and again, certain subclasses of other classes will give you access to ritual spells. I believe there's a feat that can. I believe ritual caster is a feat. You either have to have this spell in your spellbook or in your known spell. So again, a cleric has 20 known spells that they can remember 9 each day. A ritual spell has to be in those 20 that the cleric knows at that level in order for it to be cast as a ritual. For a wizard, you must have the spell in your spell book. That is a whole other topic that I'm not going to cover today, but basically, wizards have to get spells and put them in their book before they can cast them. So if you have a spell in your book as a wizard, you can always ritual cast it. The benefit of this is this saves you a spell slot. Casting a spell as a ritual does not use up a spell slot. So it's not going to use your spell slots for the day, which you could be limited on. I like to think of this as, especially in wizards, you have a cookbook. So I can make chicken soup by heart, but if I want to make, sous vide duck a la mode, I'm going to need a recipe for that. So I'm going to need to go to the book. And if I follow the recipe, I can do it today, but I would have to follow the recipe. If I really focus tomorrow, I can memorize that recipe, and that would be how a wizard prepares spells. So thank you. I went kind of quickly through that. That's everything you need for spells. If you have questions about anything I missed, please let me know. I will be going over more of the classes and how they exactly cast spells and some examples I use in the future. But for today, I want to give you just an overview and give you the basics and the formulas for how you get your modifiers and how you cast spells in the different kind. So thank you again. You can find me at press1forfireball.com. I am now on Twitch, TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram at press1forfireball for all of those. Please subscribe and turn on notifications for future videos and recommend any topics you would like me to cover, or if you would like me to expand on anything that I've already covered, or if anything that I covered was still confusing and you would like me to clarify, please let me know. And then lastly, jump into one of my games on startplaying.com. I am starting to fill seats, so they are starting to go, but I do have seats available. I have a couple long-term campaigns that have deep lore to them. I have a couple that are more just fighting and mini games for people who want to just unwind and kill stuff every week. I have beginner-friendly and veteran-friendly games and some that are a mix. So thank you, and thank you for watching.